Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov. We are continuing the Rambam's Laws of War. And last week we discussed the heter, the permission that the Rambam may have utilized to live outside of Israel, especially in which particular galut? Where did the Rambam live? Mitzrayim. Very good. Even though he told us that a person is not allowed to go down to Egypt, we read from Rav Kapach his understanding of that. Let's look here at Halakha Tet, number 9. We read this, but I didn't spend time on it. Asur latzet me'eretz Yisrael lechutza la'aretz le'olam. It is forbidden, always, at any time, for Jewish people to leave Eretz Yisrael. Ela lilmod Torah, only for the sake of learning Torah. O lisa isha, or in order to get married. O lahatzil miyad hagoyim, or to save your property, seemingly, but it could really be anything that you need to save from the hands of non-Jews in Chutz La'aretz. Ve'yachazor la'aretz, and you come live in here. I have chairs over here. Come. You okay? The fresh air. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה b'o. Amen. Ve'yachazor la'aretz. The key word here being that you can leave. That you can leave, but you have to come back. So it's not a blanket heter to leave Eretz Yisrael. Rather, you can leave on condition that you come back. By the way,
so you can go on vacation.
Yeah, by the way, if you want to look with me, let me see if I can pull this up quickly for you. If you want to look with me in the laws of Evil, it's not so far away. The laws of mourning. It's in the same book of the Rambam. The same book of the Rambam. You want to look in the Laws of Evil, chapter 3. The Rambam tells us the following halakha. Listen to this halakha. Mutar lekohen להתטמא בבית הפרס או בחוץ לארץ לדבר מצווה. A kohen is not allowed to get himself impure, right? I mean, it's forbidden for him. But he's allowed to go into Bet HaPeras. What is Bet HaPeras? I have chairs here and here. What is it? I'm going to hire an usher soon. What is the Bet HaPeras? Bet HaPeras, anyone here learn Mishnah Torah?
Not up to there yet.
It's a place, let's say a field, and in one part of the field, they were plowing the field and they found it was a grave over there. Now, is the whole field a graveyard? No, but Chachamim made a decree that this field is a safek tameh, it's a safek tuma here. Maybe there are more bones here, and therefore Kohanim don't enter there. Kohanim are allowed to go into such a place, or chutz la'aretz, for a dvar mitzvah. Why would a Kohen not be allowed to go to Chutz La'aretz?
Because they have to serve in the Bet HaMikdash.
Oh, Chachamim tell us. Okay, I'm not going to jump on that halakha on the camera. Okay, but definitely, yes. No, she's not. I think we're gonna have to jump one more place in the Rambam, okay? Just one more place. But I need one more volume, so give me a second. Here's what the Rambam writes in the laws of Tumat Met. The Rambam says, Eretz Ha'amim, the land of Goyim, meaning outside of Israel. Batechila gazru al gusha bilvad. Originally, our Chachamim only made a decree that if you touch a gush, what is a gush? A chunk of earth of Chutz La'aretz, that you become Tameh, Kevet HaPeras, similar to the laws of Bet HaPeras, which are in the previous chapter of the laws of Tumat Met. Chazru v'gazru v'lo yumutamin ela ha'mehalech ba o nogea o noseh me'afara. So the only people who became tameh were those who touched Chutz La'aretz earth or walked on the earth of Chutz La'aretz or carried the earth of Chutz La'aretz. Chazru v'gazru, Chachamim came back and made another gezerah. Al avira shi tameh, that the air of Chutz La'aretz makes one tameh. This is not a spiritual, this is a halachic category. What does it mean that the air makes someone tameh? Af al pi shelo naga v'lo nasa, even though you didn't touch the ground, you didn't lift any dirt in your hands. Kevan sheichnis rosho v'rubo la'avir eretz ha'amim, the moment you stick your head and the majority of your body, where do you learn these halachot? Rosho v'rubo, where do you learn these halachot? Who studied with Itai Masechet Sukkah? Who said that? Who said Sukkah? Oh, my parents. Okay. Masechet Sukkah, you have to have a Sukkah that can fit, hopefully, your head and the majority of your body. I mean, that's considered the majority of a person. Once the majority of you, for most people, the majority of them goes after their head. Most people is the some people their head is, you understood already. So once you stick your head and your body into Chutz La'aretz, nitma. וכן כלי חרס שהכניס אווירו לארץ העמים ושאר כלים שהכניס רובן לאוויר ארץ העמים נטמעו. And once you take utensils outside of Eretz Israel, they become time'im. It means that we live in Tumah, yes.
All of them are just ceramic.
What's the problem with ceramic? Tell me the problem with ceramic. You can't make it kasher again. Remember, there's one thing that you can't make kasher. That's why ceramic is a problem. Pottery. Now here, we say though, just a second halakha, that the tumah of Chutz La'aretz is a little bit less. The air of Chutz La'aretz is a little bit less than that of the dirt of Chutz La'aretz. And if you practically want to study these halachot, then I recommend you study the 11th chapter of the laws of Tumat Met in the book of Tahara of the Rambam's Mishneh Torah. For right now, let's jump back to the laws of mourning. So now that you know these halachot, can a kohen go to Chutz La'aretz? The answer is no. No, a kohen can't go to a place. Oh, we didn't even say. I read you a halakha like a fool. I read you a halakha. I didn't tell you why. I told you it is, but I didn't tell you why. Nobody asked why. Yes, Avino.
Even if like a person's walking down the street and there's like a graveyard, is it considered him going into the graveyard?
If a kohen walks on the side of the street,
Yeah, and there's like a graveyard.
no, unless he goes into the graveyard. Or there's something on the side of the graveyard that is covering both sides of the street, like a tent or something. Maybe a tree, according to some ways. Then that would make him tameh, because now he's under the same covering as the cemetery. That's a good question. So here's what the Rambam tells us. The Rambam tells us the Rambam tells the following in the second chapter of the laws of Tumat Met. Sadeh shenicherash ba hakever. If you have a field, and when you're plowing the field, you find bones in the field, you should call the FBI or something like that. That's the first thing you should do. And then after that, now you have to figure the halachic status of the field. Unless you put the bones there and then, I don't know, run to Mexico or something like that. And you now lost these bones in the dirt. Hi hanikret beta peras. This is called beta peras. Why beta peras? What does it mean, lifos? Like when you open a newspaper or a map, or you spread it open. Meaning that maybe now, because you plowed the field, you spread these bones. You ever seen bones? My father-in-law, he uses the chicken necks in his chicken soup. You ever seen the neck of a chicken? It's like little tiny bones. There's a million of them. And they're all floating around people's soups, and they're it's a good enough reason not to eat the soup. People have a lot of bones. Now you plowed the field, all of a sudden you find a bone, but now you spread this bone from one corner of the field all over the field. That's what's called beta parus. It's spread all over the field. וההפרה מטמא במגע ובמסע, שמא יש בו עצם כשעורה, ואינה מטמאה באוהל. Maybe now you have a problem that you're going to touch a bone that's the size of a grain of barley. Why? Grain of barley, the halachot you don't learn every day. A grain of barley is the minimum amount of bone that makes a kohen tameh. Yeah, so a tiny little fragment of a bone. But it has to be the size of a grain of barley. Yes?
How do you get a bone smaller than a grain of barley?
If it breaks or it cracks. Very good. That's the right answer. If it splinters. V'chen kol artzot ha'amim. All of the nations of the goyim. Afaran metameh b'maga uv'masa. Their dirt makes one tameh by touching it and lifting it. Mipnei ha'atzamot she'en nizharin bahen. Because of the bones in the ground. Because the goyim are not careful about burial. Because they don't have laws of tumah v'tahara. What's the proof? Do you know how many good, upstanding citizens of this country have dead bodies in their house? In a little jar.
They're buried by the roadside.
Yeah, and they're buried in the jar. And on top of the fireplace. Grandma Gertrude, she's hanging out with the family. And that's okay. By the way, the nations around us don't find that to be strange or weird or problematic. The hefech, it's like, even after their death, we give them where to live and we don't charge them rent. It's a special kavod, maybe even respect.
Well, I was doing the Hasidic 3 years ago. They were saying that the mate of a non-Jew.
Right, yeah, you and Rachel. I'm not going to do it on camera. Maybe after. Yeah. So here. Clearly, what do you see here from the Rambam? That's not the case, right? That's what you see? Okay. So, but those ashes, nobody finds it weird. Imagine a Jewish person doing that. Imagine going to your family friend's house for Shabbat, and everyone goes to get brachot from their parents, and this guy goes to the corner, puts a jar on top of his head. Imagine that's good night, grandpa. That's a crazy thing. We would never do it. The goyim don't care. They sprinkle ashes in parks and oceans and rivers, and now you could argue the ashes are burned. I'm not talking about the ashes. What I'm showing, though, is the sensitivity. You can call it craziness. We have some kind of obsessive craziness with tumat met. We go to a cemetery, we wash our hands. Before we come to the house, we wash our hands. We don't. People that are all kinds of people try to avoid going to cemeteries. People who are pregnant, people who are this, but all kinds of people that we have an obsession with not getting close to death. Other people don't have that obsession, and because of that, we have to assume that bodies could be buried everywhere. No one is suspecting people of putting dead bones everywhere. But this country's been around for a long time. Even before this country was a country, there were other nations that lived here. You know where they buried people? Were there set cemeteries? Did people bury their loved ones in their backyard? I just saw a short documentary about a certain tribe where they keep their dead bodies in their homes. And then every year on their birthday or their funeral day, they bring them out and they have dinner with them. They eat their favorite foods. Yeah, no, it's not. And for them, it's a beautiful culture. It's a culture of there is life even after death. And every family has their own. It takes them a few years till the body fully decomposes. Then they put away the body. But something, no, but Zef like that. On that day, they eat all the favorite foods of that person. They sit at the table. They dress them up in their favorite clothes. Meaning, we are crazy people. Could be the rest of the world is normal. But because of this, we, Chachamim, we're gozel, all the nations of the Goyim, we have to worry about it. Because of the bones that no one's careful about. What about Eretz Yisrael today?
Does everybody do kosher burial?
No, but nobody, like in a functional country, nobody puts dead bodies where they shouldn't go. There are laws regulating where you could do that. You're talking about cremation. Unfortunately, cremation has become a thing in Israel. Yeah. In fact, I saw a lady who, she's the one advocating for not just cremation, but using it to grow trees from it. And so she has in her house a few plants that have plaques on them. And she's a big advocate of that. But you should know, why has this become a thing in Israel? Because unfortunately, Israel's space is very tight. Maybe now we're expanding real estate a little bit, but previously there was a tightness of space. And because of that, the cemetery situation is out of control. We bury nowadays flat and rows. It takes up land. You can't reuse that land ever again. People are burying farther and farther away from the city. Nobody wants to go 3 hours away to do a funeral. They started now burying in Israel in, what's it called? Stories. Yeah, it's like, let's say in this row there are 6 bodies, one on top of the other. Yeah? In Israel and Yerushalayim, they even tried already to make a building, like a kind of like a, what do they call it in English? A mausoleum? Is that a word? They're trying to do that where they bury people, but every closet is attached to the ground somehow because they're running out of space. So alternative methods of burial are actually becoming quite popular in Israel, especially among those who care less about halakha. By the way, in halakha, you should know we had this problem before. We had this problem about the land. What do you think? We could take over all the land with graves. In Iran, there's a cemetery. It's called like the Silent City. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's millions of graves. I'm not exaggerating with the number. Millions of graves. It takes hours to walk from one side to... It's a whole city just of graves. You can Google it. I think it's called the Silent City, if I'm not mistaken. That's the name of the place. Israel could turn into that. The problem is that Israeli real estate is expensive already. And I'm going to make it worse. So what happens? But then you have people who buy plots of land, they're not dead yet, and other people come, they take those, all kinds of crazy things that are happening. And so there are all alternative halachic burials. For example, to inter a person in the ground until they're decomposed, and then to collect what's called likut atzamot, to gather the bones and then put them somewhere else. I mean, that's what they used to do. Yosef Tzaddik. What is the story of Yosef Tzaddik? We take Atzmot Yosef, we take his bones to Eretz Yisrael. This is an old thing. But many Sephardim do this. They wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. But they can't. How do you go from Spain to Eretz Yisrael? So they would get buried in Spain. They would wait a year or 2 or 3 and then they took the bones out, put them in the back of a wagon. The next guy going to Israel would take a bag of bones to Israel and throw them in a cave or put them in the ground or whatever else they would do there. It's a little complicated because sometimes certain laws of Shiva have to repeat themselves, and it's not a normal thing that you and I are used to, but it may be an alternative to taking up endless...
Processions where they would move bones from one cemetery, right? Because there's a halakha that the ex-wife of someone is not allowed to take part in the procession and moving the bones from the ex-husband.
There's an argument about that in halakha. No. There's an argument about that in halakha. You bring it up. I'm going to mention, forget the bones and moving bones. Is it proper for somebody who was once married, let's say they became a widow, now she married somebody else, or other way around, he married somebody, doesn't matter, either direction. Is it proper that they go to the grave of the person they were married to before? There are poskim who say no. Now you're in a new.
Ashkenazim come.
No, I'm not here. I don't think it's Ashkenazi Sephardi thing. Why not? The idea is now she's married to somebody else, or he's married to somebody else. The last thing a new husband or wife wants is that all day just thinking about somebody else. Maybe it makes shalom bayit problems. Huh? Yeah, you may be amazed at what people can still be jealous about. You'll be amazed. I once saw a letter from. But you want a classic case? No. All these soldiers that have died recently. Some of them are married. Those wives will ultimately get remarried. Maybe. If they can pick up themselves up in life. And they're not going to go to Yom HaZikaron anymore. Israeli Memorial Day. They're not going to light a candle for their previous spouse. It gets to be a very sticky conversation. I saw from Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg. You have a book about him in your house. The Sridei Esh. He writes a letter about this. He actually quotes a very unusual source. There was a Hasidic Rebbe known as the Mooncatcher Rebbe. Mooncatch is a little bit past Satmar in terms of its extremity, in terms of how fanatic they are, and were also historically. The Mooncatcher Rebbe wasn't a widower. The Mooncatcher Rebbe got divorced in Europe. He got divorced. They had children, got divorced, remarried. When his ex-wife died, he went to her funeral. He named all of the institutions in the Chassidut after his ex-wife. It's like they have Beis Yaakov, and that's what Chabad has. What do they call them? Beis Rivka, and all they name after different. They named all of the institutions after his ex-wife, not his. She wasn't his widow. She was his ex-wife. Divorced her. And people, some rabbis got very uncomfortable about the situation. He has a wife. He said, let me explain to you something. If a woman marries a man, knowing that he was once married before, and he has kids from that marriage, it's unfair for a person to marry somebody who's been married before and not to accept the fact that this person had a life before me. That's part and parcel of marrying that person. If a person, says Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, marries somebody who lost their spouse, a man or a woman, they should recognize that part of marrying such a person is that this person and their children, and even if they didn't have children, these memories, this time is part of that person who you're marrying. And if you can't handle it, don't marry that person. But if you did marry that person, it's part of life. And nobody said it's easy. But the Mekubalim have a crazy ceremony that a man does if he marries a woman who's been married before. Maybe the ghost of the previous husband will come haunt him in his next life. I'm not a Mekubal, but there are even such ceremonies that the Mekubalim do because maybe the dead spouse is going to be jealous of the new spouse.
You don't see much discussion about the wise felt
After each one of those. Some is left to our imagination. And so here, how did I get this far? I got far because of the Tumah. So now back to the Kohen, because the Kohen is my tangent. The Kohen can go to Chutz La'aretz. When can he go to Chutz La'aretz? We said here, look back in the laws of mourning I was in, no? Okay, can you find my little clock somewhere over here? In the laws of Evin, the Rambam told us מותר לכהן להיטמא בבית הפרס או בחוץ לארץ לדבר מצווה. He's allowed to become impure for a דבר מצווה, for a mitzvah reason. בזמן שאין שם דרך אלא היא, unless there is no other way to go, meaning assuming there's no other way to go except for that way. כגון שהלך לישא אישה או ללמוד תורה, maybe the person is going to get married, maybe he's going to learn Torah. This is exactly identical to the laws of leaving Eretz Yisrael. Meaning, these are common mitzvot that you can violate certain rules in order to fulfill them. But what about learning Torah? אף על פי שיש שם מי שילמדו בארץ ישראל. What if there's a person in Eretz Yisrael who you can learn Torah from? Says the Rambam, לא מן הכל אדם זוכה ללמוד. You don't merit to learn from everyone. learning from a person is very personal. And that decision can't be made by who's in your neighborhood, who's not in your neighborhood. Sometimes you travel in order to learn Torah. Sometimes that's what you do. I think that not everyone recognizes that this is the truth. People try to force people to learn Torah in places where it doesn't work for them. It doesn't work that way. What works for one person doesn't work for another person. Some people, they go to one Tamid Cham and it changed their life. And other people, it changed their life and now they never want to go there again. That's another, and that is a very personal thing. And therefore, if a person needs to go study Torah, Kohen needs to go study Torah, and the only way to go to study Torah is through this Beta Peras, or go through Chutz La'aretz where he's not allowed to go, he goes there because the mitzvah of learning Torah from somebody who you can connect with is very important. And that brings us back to Eretz Yisrael. So the same thing would apply to leaving Eretz Yisrael. So back in our Rambam, a person is allowed to leave for these reasons: to get married, to learn Torah, to save their money. We're back in chapter 5, Halakha Tet. It's a free eye exam. So here we continue. You're allowed to go for business. But to stay in Chutz La'aretz, asur, it's forbidden. Until, like we said last week, that the price of food doubles, in which case you can go to Chutz La'aretz. When is that true? When you have money and the food is very expensive. If a person can't afford living there, maybe it's because of them, not because of the land. They can go anywhere where they find where to work. And even though it's permissible to leave Eretz Yisrael under those conditions, it's not the proper thing to do, it's not the righteous way to act. Because the sons of Naomi, from the story of Ruth, Machlon and Chilion, they were two leaders of the generation. And they left because it was very distressing in Eretz Yisrael. And they were guilty of being destroyed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu killed them. That's why they died. That's why Ruth and Orpah, they want to leave because their husbands are dead. What does Naomi tell them? I don't have another son to give you. I don't have anything else to give you. Orpah ends up leaving. That's why she's called Orpah, because she turned her oref. We say the Jewish people are a stiff-necked people. Am kshe oref. Oref is right here. Turned their oref. She turned her back on Ruth. Naomi. I always felt like it wasn't fair because she told her to go. I mean, she just did what she was told to do. She was a good daughter-in-law. Ruth argues. She stays. Ruth, interesting. Ruth maybe. What does Ruth mean?
Revaya, from Revaya, to drink enough.
Okay. I've heard many things about what Ruth means. I don't think Ruth means anything. Maybe. The closest we say about Ruth is that Ruth is the gematria of. It comes out something. There's a whole derasha here connected to 613 mitzvot minus the rabbinic. So here, what you have, Ruth. Maybe the closest you find in her name is that she converted to Judaism. Maybe that's the close. Like I told you last week in Ruth, every name is not a name. Machlon v'Chilion are not their names. If it was their names, then they would know they were going to get killed, no? And who names their kid Machlon? Chilion. That's a crazy name. Yeah. That's a much different name.
In the book of Melachim, it says they have different names. Saraf and Yoash.
Oh, very good. No, but Saraf, maybe Mishon Serafim, Chayot HaKodesh, where here you have names. By the way, you also find the Meraglim, the spies that you find in the Torah. Look at their names, and you'll recognize those names are not necessarily names. Just when you have a chance, look in the Torah. Sometimes names, they're there to tell you something about a person, but not necessarily the name of that person, like the name. Even then, they find it in the times of the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir, his name is not Meir, his name is... No, Nehorai also means Meir. It's the same word in Aramaic. So why do they call him Me'ir? Because he lit up the eyes of Chachamim in Halakha. How much light did he give the eyes in Halakha? So much they couldn't understand him. Explain. The Mishnah, what is the piyut? We have a piyut, a Sephardic piyut. Kol Mishnah setu mahir Rabbi Meir. Every Mishnah that doesn't have an author is Rabbi Meir Balanis. Every single one. Rabbi Meir wrote the majority of the Mishnah. Now, nonetheless, halakha is almost not like Rabbi Meir anywhere. Why? Avinam, you ever had someone shine a flashlight in your face? No. No?
Oh, yeah.
Should I do it? Yeah. Me, okay. You shine a flashlight in someone's eyes, or it's after Havdalah, boom, someone turns on the lights. How much do you see? Usually light blinds people. And they say Rabbi Meir, he was so full of light that he couldn't, the Chachamim couldn't logically understand the things that he said. Sometimes lights shine so bright that you can't actually use them. And it's a lesson for us, by the way. There's a Kiddusha, there's light that lights and illuminates, and light that brights and blinds people. There's also light that burns people. All kinds of light. First has to know how to use the light that they have. So here, these names, names are not always what you think they are. Tov, Chachamim continue. Gdolei HaChachamim, the greatest of our Chachamim. Today I heard a shiur from a Chacham in Israel who said, calling us Mishichim, calling us Messianic people, it's not a derogatory thing. In Israeli media, now anybody who believes in some kind of Jewish redemption, some kind of anybody who has some kind of religious conviction for the future is called Mishichi, like a dangerous, fanatic, messianic person. And he explained very simply, what is the Jewish concept of Mashiach? Is the improvement of the world. By the way, for those of us who believe in a Rambam style of Mashiach, it's not very supernatural in the first place. It's a very natural Mashiach. Sure. The belief in our Geulah, in our Mashiach, in our redemption is that we believe that the world can be better than it is right now. In fact, he said the dangerous people are those who don't believe the world can get better. Those of us, crazy people who believe the world can get better, it's a good thing. You should be proud of us, not the opposite. We're trying to make the world a better place. Even secular Zionism, like it's called, tried to make the world a better place. Tried to make the Jewish life better. And was successful, by the way. Messianic, that's the definition of Messianic, to take something bad and try to make it better. So we shouldn't be guilty of being Messianic. Chachamim. In Israel, another derogatory term that has been given to people that are religious, they called it menashkei mezuzot, mezuzah kissers. Like, there's normal people and there's mezuzah kissing people. And, okay.
But that's a derogatory name. It's not like a...
Yeah, I know. I'm saying a derogatory name, the people who kiss mezuzot. Now, I know. Hara Peretz, for example, he doesn't kiss mezuzot. Why? He thinks most of the mezuzot are not kasher, so he doesn't want to touch them. He only kisses his own mezuzot. Yeah, the mezuzot he knows that are kasherot. That's true. Rabbi Tendler in Baltimore, I remember he used to make fun of people who kiss mezuzot, because as a Litvish rabbi, he didn't find any source anywhere classic that says you should kiss the mezuzah. Okay, fine. At the end of the day, the mezuzah kissers of the world, it's not a derogatory thing. Look here. Gidolei HaChachamim hayu menashekin al techumei Eretz Yisrael. Our greatest rabbis would kiss the borders of Eretz. When they got to Eretz Yisrael, they would kiss the ground. By the way, my family, we do this all the time. Whenever we land in Israel, we kiss the ground. Used to be better. In Israel, I used to get out of the airplane, used to walk to the bus. I remember as a kid, the first welcome to Israel was when the airplane door opens and 9,000 degrees of heat and humidity come into the airplane. Like, welcome to Israel, now stand outside and wait for a bus. That was like our childhood. We get on a bus, they drag us to the airport. Nowadays, you get out of the airplanes, air conditioning, glass, stuff. You don't even get to kiss the ground anywhere. So sometimes we wait, mamash, until we're out in some parking lot of Ben Gurion Airport, or who knows where I am, right? Yerushalayim, the first time I get out of the taxi, to kiss the ground. But Eretz Yisrael, you come, you kiss the ground. By the way, if you kiss the ground in Ben Gurion Airport, it's okay too, but it's like 3.5 million people that are walking over there. I don't know if that's the ground you want to kiss. You might want to find a quiet corner. Umenashkin avaneha, and they would kiss the stones of Eretz Yisrael. Umitgalgelin al afara, and they would roll over on the dirt of Eretz Yisrael. V'chen hu omer, that's what it says in Tehillim. David HaMelech writes, כי רצו עבדיך את אבניה, ואת עפרה יכוננו. That your children, your sons, your servants, they wanted the dirt and the stones of Eretz Yisrael. The Ben Ish Chai, I should have brought it for you. The Ben Ish Chai, he mentions that when he came to Eretz Yisrael, it was a famous trip the Ben Ish Chai took, that he came to Eretz Yisrael. Over there in Eretz Yisrael, he had a vision. He realized that he was from the neshama of Benayahu ben Yehoyada. That's why he named all of his books. Benayahu, Ben Ish Chai, Ben Ish Chai. All of these books were named after Benayahu. He said he had the same soul as him. Like I said, it's not my department. But he brought back dirt and rocks from Eretz Yisrael. And where the mezuzah is, in the doorpost, he put the rocks from Eretz Yisrael. And he put dirt at the entrance of the Beit HaKnesset. He sprinkled some dirt. And everybody who came to the Beit HaKnesset would kiss the mezuzah, would kiss the rocks of Eretz Yisrael, would roll in the dirt and come pray. That was how he did it in his Beit HaKnesset. I'm not advocating the dirt part, but definitely if you have rocks from Eretz Yisrael, it wouldn't be crazy for you to kiss them. What does it mean when you kiss something? Why do you kiss the tefillin when you take them off and put them on? Why do you kiss your tzitzit? Why do you kiss the Torah? Why? Chibuv mitzvah, because you want to show that you love mitzvot. What's the reason you smush wine all over your face after having done that? No, why? Why do people do that? The reason given. You know any Middle Eastern expressions? The Arabs, the Persians, a few different groups. When they invite you to their house, they have things they tell you. Not like Americans. Say, please have a seat. There's a different culture. In the Middle East, they'll say, please come walk on my face into my house. They'll tell you such a thing. Yeah, like, on my eyes, you should step on my eyes. That's what they tell you. Now, it may sound very exaggerated, but chibuv mitzvah is to, you put the wine on your face to show, I love Havdalah wine so much, I would even wash my face with it. That's the idea of why people put it on their face. I guess the better thing to do than drink it would be to wipe your face with it, no? My grandmother would keep the wine in her refrigerator, and everything that went wrong. You had a headache, she put the wine on you. You had a toothache, but was Dod Yossi's wine in the refrigerator. Yes. What? Yeah, the Mekubalim have some kind of idea of throwing it on the floor by the doorway. Exactly. Well, when you have a dirt floor, you could do all kinds of minhagim like that. Like roll over in the dirt. Anyways, there's dirt. But when you start dealing with other... I saw a Hasidic Rebbe once. He wore this beautiful white robe. I can't tell you. And then he took the Rebbes, they don't use little Kiddush cups. They use like Og Melech HaBashan cups like this. And he drank the wine Havdalah. He poured the whole gallon of wine on the candle. And then, after he finished with like mamash, his beard, his peot, the whole thing, he took it and poured it all in his pocket. Yeah, he saw the video. Don't believe me? He took the whole plate and poured it into his pocket. I was watching the video. And that white robe turned red. And then you wonder where pogroms come from, the blood of Christian babies, and who knows what else they come up with. That. But he, I guess that was for him, that was his way of chibub mitzvah, and he must have chassidim who play his dry cleaning bills or something, because I don't know how that works, but that was what he did. He became rich. Very good. Amru chachamim, therefore say our chachamim. I want to finish the chapter today. Kol hashochen be'eretz Yisrael, anybody who lives in Eretz Yisrael, avonotav mechulin. His averot are forgiven. Shneimar, like it says in the Torah, in the Navi Yeshaya. Uval yomar shochen chaliti ha'am hayoshev ba nesu avon. The context of this pasuk, and the person shouldn't say that it's so hard for me to live in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is such a difficult place to live, because just by living there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgives all your averot. My grandfather once told my father, he said, look at all these kibbutzniks working on Yom Kippurim. He said, don't talk about them. They live in Eretz Yisrael. They're greater than all the Jews living in Chutz La'aretz. All their averot. It doesn't mean you can move to Israel and do averot and just keep walking around in circles and get your averot freed. Yeah? Afilu halach ba'ar ba'amot. Even if you walk 4 amot in Eretz Yisrael. Zocheh lechayei ha'olam haba. You merit the next world just from taking 4 steps in Eretz Yisrael. Yeah, just because of that mitzvah. V'chol ha'kavur ba, but you're going to be there with a lot of Israelis. Just get ready. V'chol ha'kavur ba, and everybody who's buried there in Eretz Yisrael, nitkaper lo. His averot are forgiven. because he's buried in the land of Eretz Yisrael. Uchilu hamakom shehu bo mizbach kapara. And it's like that place that they're buried in is like the altar of forgiveness. Shneimar, like it says, v'chiper admato amo. The land gave him a kapara. By the way, I'm going to say this now. My kids are here listening. After 120 years, I don't want to be buried in San Diego. It doesn't matter where I live. Please don't bury me in Chutz La'aretz. Whoever it is, I'd rather be buried behind a dumpster in Eretz Yisrael, mamash, than to be buried here with all the kavod and the... Please, I'm asking from somebody who's one day will see this video, do a chesed with me, please. Uvepuranut omer, and by the puranut, Amos the prophet.
When somebody goes into the Bet after killing somebody, they run away. You just put them to death if they just walk around.
Very good, because that's a great question. Because at the end of the day, there has to be law and order also in Eretz Yisrael. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say, "Oh, he lived in Eretz Yisrael, forgiven for his avirot." But we can't have a country where somebody kills somebody, then runs 4 amot in Eretz Yisrael, and then he gets off the hook, and the whole life that's how he's doing avirot. There are Jews like that. You know, like you ever watch The Godfather? They go throw a few bodies in the Hudson River. They come to church. They tell the father. He forgives them, and then they go back to kill more people. That's not the way teshuvah works. You can't do that, right? It's not the way that it goes. There are Jews like that. They do avirot. They go give donations. They go to the kotel. Whatever they do, they think now they're over. They put bigger tzitzit. You see every time in Israel somebody gets arrested for rape, for murder. All of a sudden they come out of prison with kippah, the tzitzit. It's like overnight he became a religious rabbi over there in prison. It's not normal, but it's a reaction of trying to undo my avirot by pretending to be very observant or very religious. Uvepuranut omer, when Amos, the prophet, tells Amatzia, who's Amatzia? Who's Amatzia?
The king.
Okay, what is special about him?
He was related to Shaar.
No, that's Amos.
Shaar ben Amos.
So I'm talking about in the times of Amos. Amos, he was Nevi HaSheker. He was a false prophet. And Amos tells him, I'm not saying to you, I'm saying to him, Ve'ata al adamat time'at tamut, that you will die in impure earth. V'Yisrael galo yigreh ma'al admato, and the Jewish people will be exiled from their land, meaning that you find that, unfortunately, the curse, the punishment is to die and be buried in Chutz La'aretz. Ve'no domeh kol tato mechayim, למי שקלטתו לאחר מיתם. You can't compare a person who's buried in Eretz Yisrael when they're alive compared to when they're buried in Eretz Yisrael when they're dead.
That doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Achanan, can you explain to me?
If somebody lives in Eretz Yisrael when they're alive, it's better than to just be buried there.
Ah, very good. It's better to live in Eretz Yisrael and then to die in Eretz Yisrael than to live your whole life in Eretz Ha'amim and to die and go be buried in Eretz. But even that's better than nothing. Even that's better than nothing. But the preference is to live in Israel, not to die in Israel. And so it's better for us to live there, and then after 120 years we die there, than for us to just die here and be transferred over there. V'af al pi ken, and even though that's true, Gedolei HaChachamim, the greatest of our Chachamim, Hayu malichin et metehen l'sham. They would take the dead of their family there. Tze'ulmad, very good. Yaakov Avinu v'Yosef HaTzadik. Look in Yaakov Avinu and Yosef HaTzadik. But whenever the Rambam tells you the words Tze'ulmad, go out and learn, he's telling you that you're about to hear a story from the Mikra. He doesn't say Tze'ulmad about other things. Tze'ulmad is a code. He's about to tell you a story from the Mikra. So Yaakov Avinu, Yosef HaTzadik, both of them do everything they can to have burial in Eretz Yisrael and to bury their family members in Eretz Yisrael. It's very important. It's not so simple. It's not so simple. It takes not just money. Money is the least of your problems. It's money and proper papers and airplane tickets and buying plots of land. If you're not an Israeli citizen, you are an Israeli citizen. All kinds of, it's very complicated. But if a person can and they're able to, I know somebody here in San Diego owns 2 plots in Eretz Yisrael, him and his wife. And he got news that in the cemetery there in Israel, they know that there's certain graves that are reserved. That's what do. You ever go to the airplane and they overbook the flight, and then they're tough. Sorry, we overbooked the flight. You have to stay here till tomorrow. They're doing that. Some Chevra Kadishas are busy selling burial plots of people they know live in America. And in 20 years, when that person dies and they'll come to be buried, oh, sorry, we overbooked. What can we do? We didn't take him out of the ground. So this person flew to Israel and paid to put a fake tombstone on top of the grave. You know how much a tombstone costs? 2 tombstones, one for him and one for his wife. And he already paid for it to be removed and replaced when he dies. Haikal, that nobody should steal his grave while he's living in America. It's protecting your assets. This is the mamash.
Volunteers on the airplane. You give up your grave
for free miles. Le'olam yadu adam be'eretz Yisrael. A person, these are not just agadic teachings, these are actual halachot in the Mishneh Torah. We'll finish with them. Le'olam yadu adam be'eretz Yisrael. A person should always prefer to live in Eretz Yisrael. Afilu be'ir sheruba goyim. Even in a city which is majority not Jewish. Ve'al yadur b'chutz ha'aretz, and he should not prefer to live outside of Israel. Be'ir sheruba Yisrael, in a city that is majority Jewish. So it's better for you to go move to, I would say Gaza, that was one thing. Better for you to go move to Shechem than to live in Lakewood, New Jersey. You can't say San Diego is a city that is majority Jewish. That's why I'm saying Lakewood. Yeah, Minastam, already Lakewood is, and all the Jackson and Tom's River and all the places around there. All of that is already Jewish. It doesn't matter. You have yeshivot, and you have kodelim, and you have rabbis. But it would be better for a betting person to live in Eretz Yisrael together with terrorists than to live outside of Eretz Yisrael with the most religious Jews in the world. Ve'afilu be'ir sheruba Yisrael. Because anyone who leaves Eretz Yisrael to live in Chutz La'aretz, Ki'ilu oved avodah zara. It's like he's worshipping idols. By the way, the Gemara is nicer than the Rambam. The Gemara says, Ki'ilu oved avodah zara b'tahara. It's serving a form of idol worship that is permissible. So idol worship is avodah zara, but it's like the mutar variety. If you wanted a little bit of an explanation of that, I'm not sure this will hold up water in a Maimonidean explanation, but the Mekubalim explain Avodah Zarah. Why? The Ramchal has a book called Derech Hashem. You familiar with this book? It's a very interesting book. You could do with it what you like. In there, the Ramchal explains that Hashgachat HaBoreh, the divine providence of the Creator, exists only in Eretz Yisrael. And outside of Eretz Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has appointed an angel to watch the people of every country. You remember that when Yaakov Avinu was laying on the ground and all the angels are going up and down, and he meets the angel of who?
He meets the angel.
Vayivater Yaakov levado v'yavek ish imo ad. Yeah, what happened? Who is he fighting with? Who's the ish? Esav's angel. What is Esav's angel? This is the angel of the people of Esav. He's the one that HaKadosh Baruch Hu appointed to give hashgacha over the people of Esav. So when a Jew lives outside of Israel, it's like he's swapping out his direct relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu for that with an angel. That's the understanding of Mekubalim. Here the Rambam is telling you, just take it at face value. It's like one who worships Avodah Zarah. Shneimar, like it says about David. David HaMelech tells Shaul HaMelech. Why did David have to run to Chutz La'aretz? Because he was running away from King Shaul. He was running away from him. And David HaMelech complains. He complains. And he says, Ki gershuni hayom mistapech benachalat Adonai. Lemor lech avod Elohim acherim. I was forced today out of Eretz Yisrael, and I was told to go worship other gods. I've said this pasuk once in my life. When I was forced in June of 2012 to leave Eretz Yisrael, and I wanted to stay in Eretz Yisrael, and I was even willing to go to the army. In the beginning, I didn't want to go to the army. I'm not going to lie to you. I was learning in yeshiva. I was teaching in yeshiva. I felt that I was doing a lot for Am Yisrael. I didn't have to go to the army. I said, I'll go to the army. And I tried to get drafted in the army. I even went to the Lishkat Giyus in Haifa where they threw me out because they told me that I'm not able to be drafted. I'm not Israeli enough to be drafted. I came here to America and I tried to get drafted. At that time, I was almost 23. The 23-year-old only has to serve 6 months. It's not a big deal to go serve for 6 months. Ultimately, the state of Israel decided they didn't know what to do with me. So they said I have to leave Israel until I turn 26. What happens if I would stay in Israel? They weren't going to draft me to the army. If I would stay in Israel, they were going to put me in prison for 2 years. Why? Because they considered me retroactively not serving in the army, even though I had permits to live in Israel. I had a student visa. Those of you who know the story, you know the story. Israeli bureaucracy at its best. I remember I just met my wife, so it was June 26th of 2012. I met my wife on May 24th of 2012. I met her. I decided already I want to marry her. But I told her, I'm sorry, we were planning, we're living in Israel. I was told by the army I've got to leave. I got on a plane, I left. I said goodbye to Dvora in the airport, in Ben Gurion airport. I don't know if I was ever going to come back to Israel. Uvda, I'm still here in America after all these years. And I said this pasuk. How can you force a Jewish person to leave Eretz Israel? You're forcing me to go worship Avodah Zarah. That's what happened to me. And I wasn't chased after by Shaul, and I wasn't David HaMelech. I'm not going to compare myself. But I said this pasuk once in my life. Uvepuranut omer, and in a negative context, Yecheskel the prophet tells also the Nevi'eh HaSheker, the false prophets. He says, Vel admat Yisrael lo yavo, they will not come to the land of Israel. I'll read you the whole pasuk if you want. Yecheskel tells the prophets, Lachen ko amar Adonai Elohim. Adonai says, Ya'an daberchem shav v'chazitem kazav, because you pretended to be prophets and you prophesied falsehood. Lachen hineni alechem neum Adonai Elohim. And therefore I am telling you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'ayta yadi el haneviim achozim shav v'akosmim kazav besod ami lo yu u'vichtav bet Yisrael lo yikatevu. They will not be considered. Even I won't count them even as idol worshippers with the Jewish idol worshippers. They will not come to the land of Israel, and they will know that I am Hashem your God. You think we don't have Nevi'eh Sheker now? We have Nevi'eh Sheker now. We have. People who tell us all kinds of things are going to happen, all kinds of things, and they're lying. And every time that they say something and it doesn't happen, Am Yisrael needs to tell the Chavim, you guys are liars. You're liars. If you told somebody you were going to meet them at the park at 12:30 and you came at 12:45, they could be mad at you. These guys tell you Mashiach is coming at 2 o'clock on Tuesday and he doesn't come and nobody cares. They keep writing out checks and donations. And lo yuman kisub. They're unbelievable. Kashem, the Rambam has one last halakha. Kashem she'asur latzet meha'aretz lechutz ha'aretz. Just like you're not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael to go to chutz ha'aretz, Kach asur latzet mi Bavel l'shar aratzot. It's forbidden for Jewish people to leave Bavel, Babylon, to any other country. Wait, let's. Shneimar, like it says in Yirmiyahu, what does it say? כה אמר אדוני צבאות, אלוהי ישראל על הכלים הנותרים בית אדוני ובית מלך יהודה וירושלים. בבל היובאו, ושם יהיו עד יום פוקדי אותם נאום אדוני. That I took them to Bavel and they will stay in Bavel until that day that I summon them from Bavel. והעליתים והשיבותים על המקום הזה until I bring them back to this place. That's what the Rambam says. That's what the pasuk says. Show me a little bit to try to make some sense for you. It seems that first off, the Rambam, he says that only about leaving Bavel to other countries, but not to Eretz Yisrael. So certainly a person can leave Bavel to go to Eretz Yisrael. The idea was not to leave Bavel to go to Egypt, or to go to Yemen, or to go to Russia. Those are not options in the story. Now, if you want to know, that there's a Masechet Ketubot, page Kuf Yud Aleph, 111. Famous. You guys know these in the Neturei Karta?
Yeah.
Yemach Shamam. You could say about them Yemach Shamam. It's okay. Yeah. Our parents told me that anyone who does not believe that the state of Israel is the beginning of Itchaltat de Geula, you don't count them as a minyan. And if they touch your wine, you pour it down the drain. It's a kfira b'hashgachat habore. It's a direct. It doesn't matter what you think about Israel or Zionist. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought us to Israel has religious significance. It shows the hand of God in history. If you deny, by the way, you remember there's a famous Hasidic Rebbe whose name I'll not mention right now, only because his Hasidim are dangerous. That when remember the Entebbe raid, Yoni Netanyahu and the whole Chevra that go there, Idi Amin, what was his name? They went there, they saved the Jews. Now this Rebbe was anti-Zionism his whole life. He had to say, how did HaKadosh Baruch Hu let the Zionists win? What did he say? He wrote an essay, Maaseh Satan. It was like, there's a midrash that when the Jews came out of Egypt, that the golden calf came out of the fire. I'm not an expert in midrashim, but they say it was a Satan. He made the golden calf, and the Jews, it wasn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it was the Satan. Same thing. He said Entebbe was not HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it was the Satan trying to get people to believe in the validity of Zionism. That was his whole. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, very good. Which again shows you, it's a very Christian mentality. By the way, that Satan comes in, and he's stronger than God, and the whole world he's fighting with God, and it's a crazy thing. It's not a normal situation. But this whole approach, there are Jews who have it. And these Jews, this is the definition of a person that you can't touch their wine. They drink your wine, they touch your wine, it makes it nesech. They don't believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu the way you and I believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
It's very robotic. When you see them at the Palestinian rallies, they stand there like puppets. There's like no humans.
So what's their halachic rationale? They claim the Talmud says the following. The Talmud says the Jews took 3 oaths. And one of those oaths is that we will not return to Israel until HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us back, whatever that means, by the way. And we in the summer, we studied a number of opinions here, especially Sephardic ones, about that teaching and about what that means. Nonetheless, the Rambam never mentions these 3, it's a piece of Agadah. Agadah is Agadah, do with Agadah what you want, but there's no halacha barring the Jews from going back to Israel. But here, about Bavel, is something interesting. And Rambam, he doesn't say why. So Rambam doesn't tell you why you can't leave Bavel. There's a reason, but Rambam doesn't tell you. Rashi gives you a reason. Rashi explains that in that time, the center of Jewish life was in Bavel. The yeshivot were in Bavel, Chachamim were in Bavel. And therefore, how can a person, if you're not going to go to Eretz Yisrael, at the very least you should stay in Bavel. It had Torah. It was not a center like it was then. Yes? But let's just say it like this, very simple. How many Jews are left in Iraq? Could be there's some random Jew there. I don't know if there is or isn't. But since 1948, I think there is already this, whatever the Rambam felt or didn't feel or what he thought about it doesn't actually matter. Today, Lamaaseh, Jews don't live in Bavel. So there is no practical conversation to be had about whether or not Jews could leave Bavel for Eretz Yisrael. This was an interesting halakha. It existed at a certain time. And you and I are, Baruch Hashem, beyond that generation. Practically. Not even halakha. Practically, we're beyond those times. Okay, that's already a different conversation of why that's the case. Why is it the case, and is it the case? And there are some rabbis that have tried to overthrow the Talmud Bavli with the Talmud Yerushalmi out of a very political sense. We obviously view the Talmud Bavli as binding. You could even argue very, very simple fact, it's binding simply because the Jewish people accepted it on themselves. Also, it's a much later work in the sense that it's the final collection of halachot that we have from our last Beit Din Hagadol that ever stood in the Jewish people. I'm going to call it a night now. If anybody has any questions or comments, please stick around if you need to go. Thank you for learning with me. B'ezrat Hashem, next week, the following week when I come back, we'll have here a shiur and we will continue in these halachot. We only have a few more weeks to do these halachot, and then we'll go back to our regular regimen of Rambam and Shulchan Aruch. B'ezrat Hashem.